What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about PlayStation's multi-platform release strategy. So this has been a journey the last couple days, and luckily, I think I waited a good amount of days to talk about it because it comes out, hot and heavy, right? There's this job posting, and it's for a person that's going to be looking at games and looking at how to put it in other places, right? And it gets blown up. And this was, by the way, a very high paying position. So if you're interested, go ahead and apply. But I mean, it's a thing that blew up the internet. You had people saying 1,000 different things. And then, as even that day went on, and then the next couple days, over the weekend, I think things settled down a bit. Where I think Shinobi, actually, which is a highly respected, he's in the gaming industry himself. He knows stuff. He actually knows PlayStation specific stuff as well. He came out almost immediately and talked about this, maybe not overhyped, but maybe over exaggerating. People are getting a little too crazy with the speculation out there. Because for a good day or so, it was, oh my dear God, is this how we get God of War and how we get Spider-Man on Xbox? Now, where I stand on that, I want to go over what I think about it and then also what I would do if I was PlayStation, okay? Now, here's the thing. Exclusivity, I think, is a tricky thing. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's not important at all, because I do think when you buy a system, it's not to fuel these console war things on social media. I don't really care. It's not really about that. I mean, is that a fun little byproduct? When two companies are doing well, and this really started, I would say, around the PS3 360 era, right? You have two companies that were doing well, and PlayStation kind of faltered in the beginning. But it breeds competition. And that's another thing right there, right? Having healthy consoles breeds the competition against each other so that they're making better products. You don't really want PlayStation to be all on its own. You don't want Xbox giving up all this different jazz. So I'm not going to sit here and say that, having zero exclusives to your platform is a good thing. I think what we have seen is as time has gone on, it has completely diminished what having an Xbox console means. It's not their strategy anymore, and I can respect that, and I've backed it. I've made videos on that in the past. Xbox doesn't really care about that. They care about Game Pass. But you know what? At one time they did, and it didn't work. They weren't successful at doing it, and so I think they had to pivot and try other things. PlayStation, has had exclusives for a very, very long time. They play all sorts of different games with second-party, third-party stuff. Again, where I kind of stand on, I guess that is specifically, and it goes into this job posting, I've said 1,000 times, I think multiplayer games, 100%, release them everywhere. They don't, when I say they don't really matter, I should say it doesn't really matter where multiplayer games come out on, because the whole point, and this is what we said about Concord, Helldivers 2, we've said this before too, Helldivers 2, I mean, that was a great success, and that was awesome, and it only released, PC and PlayStation, right, PS5, so, that worked, but Concord, what could that have done if it was on Xbox? Now, a valid answer could also be nothing. I've said that before when it comes to Final Fantasy. Releasing Final Fantasy on Xbox, sure, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not against it. But will it actually do anything? Rebirth, let's say, struggles on PS5. Is it going to suddenly do triple the numbers on Xbox? I highly doubt it. It might not hurt. It might not help. Okay? Those are interesting things that we talked about in the past. So, this job listing comes out again. People immediately, I think, go to the Spider-Mans and God of Wars. Myself personally, I just don't think those are games that ever move over. Now here, as people are pointing out, never say never. It's the Xbox for games thing, right? I mean, we are lied to all the time. Especially you look at the Xbox kind of comparison, because they're pretty related or pretty close. Phil Spencer comes out there, talks about these games. In reality, that's a lie, right? And in reality, half a year later, that narrative changes. Now, it's not like this is the first time we heard something about PlayStation. That's why I don't think I overreacted in the moment. We have heard from the highest of the high in Sony, not even just PlayStation, Sony, that's talked about multi-platform releases and getting these things out there. Again, what I think that ultimately means is more of this PC strategy, right? Releasing games. Now, their sweet spot tends to be 12 to 18 months. I think that probably comes closer to 0. Not that it necessarily is day and date, but maybe it's 6 to 12 months, right? Because you look at a game, most sales are probably going to be within the first year. you might be able to argue within the first half year, and then after that, maybe it can come out on PC, right? And I mean, to be fair, like, they are doing it. They're putting games on PlayStation, PC. Some of those games are at the same time. Some third-party games are at the same time, PlayStation and PC. They're console exclusive, right, to PlayStation. Again, multiplayer. So if I were them, what would I would do? Multiplayer goes out everywhere. It doesn't really matter. In fact, it's actually beneficial to release it everywhere because just more players, the better. It doesn't matter if it does half the units on Xbox as it does PlayStation. They're people. They're people that are populating your game that needs to be populated. It might make a difference if it's single player, but if it's multiplayer, it's like, well, you could use anybody, right? No, the more the merrier in a multiplayer game because you're just helping to keep it alive, okay? As we talked about as well, second-party games, I think those days are coming to an end. I think the days of specifically Silent Hill, the days of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, or Remake, both of them, I think those days are numbered and might actually already be over. Now, maybe not entirely, like Phantom Blade Zero is a good example of a game next year. I'm sure you'll have a couple holdovers, but overall, I do think that era is over. And then all that's left, is those first-party things. Now, to say that none of them should go over is also probably not a smart thing to do. I think you can live in a world of kind of harmony where you're fair, you're putting things out on as many places as possible that kind of need it, and then you're also trying to worry about the future of your platform. Because this is, again, where I will defend exclusives. If every game releases everywhere, what's the point of having at least more than one? Then it's about picking your more than one. And I know even Xbox has talked about, like, hey, generally at this point of all of our lives, the ones that we've kind of grown up with and we have friends lists and trophies or achievements or whatever, right? Those are the ones that you're more guaranteed. You're not going to swap. People aren't swapping anymore. And I somewhat believe that. I do think if you give people enough reason, they might migrate over. And they're generally, especially the last 5 to 10 years, has not been enough reason for either of them to swap consoles. I just don't think there's been that it game in a long, long time, to be honest with you, that's really convinced the one side to join the other side. So I think it's a mix of what Xbox said, but I also think there's more to it. But it is where I'll defend it. If a PlayStation and an Xbox play the exact same thing, it's just two companies making almost the exact same console at that point. What's the point? So I do believe in some exclusivity, if only to give you reason to buy. I feel like I have to constantly defend myself with this stuff, which I probably shouldn't do. I should probably just be more direct. But I mean, I have stood up for that stuff in the past. Like when we got into the PS5 and Xbox Series S next generation, I was a big talker when it came to leaving last gen behind. I had said it over, and I was talking about that 2021, 2022, leave those and I said it because, well, if you want us to buy these next gen consoles and we're spending almost $1,000, if not more, to get a next gen console, then you have to give us a reason to play it. And this is a somewhat similar thing. I think this is more exclusive because it's just that console, but I am a big believer that if you're going to sell me a freaking product, you have to give me a reason to get the product. And next gen or current gen games is a good way of doing it, but also games you can only ever play on that console is a reason to get that console, okay? But when it comes to the first party stuff, I do agree with what I think a lot of the talk has been online, because again, when this broke, you go to Uncharted and I saw people say, is this the first step of The Last of Us Part 1 and 2 being on Xbox, etc., etc. People talk about fairness, like if Halo comes to PlayStation, does PlayStation have to give something over? But there is a deeper level to that, and I think something like what we've seen with Bandai Namco, doing it with Patapon, and they did it with Freedom Wars, I think, earlier this year. I think that's an interesting strategy, and specifically, here's one thing. Any game that has been considered abandoned by PlayStation, I feel like should be fair game if it's ever brought back. So it's like, I've seen a lot of people, for some reason, the algorithm of mine is filled with Gravity Rush, which I'm not complaining about because I do love Gravity Rush, but there's a good one. There's a Gravity Rush movie coming out. There's been rumors of a Gravity Rush 2 remaster. Japan's studio who made them has been destroyed, right? They're not even around anymore. So could you consider Gravity Rush a dead IP? Could Bandai Namco maybe get their hands on it and say, hey, let's do a re-release. Let's do Gravity Rush 1 and 2 remastered, and it's coming out. Would you put that on Xbox? Why not? Absolutely. If there's no future in it, and it's not something that, again, like you're thinking, okay, business-wise, Spider-Man would get people to buy a PlayStation, a new Uncharted, a Last of Us, whatever you think. But is Gravity Rush going to do it? Honestly, I mean, Sly Cooper's an interesting one. You think about these things, though, right? Think about and I've said so many freaking times, think about the long-lost, abandoned, PS3 era games. The infamous trilogy, Resistance, Killzone, Twisted Metal, PS3. I mean, there's a lot of them. Puppeteer is a good kind of double-A one that I always like to bring up. Like, these are games, at least some of them, that could largely be considered abandoned. And they are, PlayStation IP. Could they go on to Xbox? Sure, why not? So if I'm this person making $350,000 a year, this is really my strategy. I really don't think it's all that hard. Here's a quick summary to end the video, okay? The big time exclusives, maybe not. Probably not, to be honest, right? But what I will say is you put it on PlayStation and you get it on PC within 6 to 12 months, right? And then for some of the dormant ones, some of like the Lego Horizon ones, right? Some of the kind of B-tier level, you very much consider putting it absolutely everywhere, which includes Nintendo Switch 2 and Xbox. Knock yourself out, right? And then multiplayer, Helldivers, if there's ever a Helldivers 3 or a game that has similar potential, honestly, this fair game money symbol, Marathon, all of this stuff, they all should come out everywhere. Again, like you need players to play it. It doesn't matter which console beats the other one in terms of who's buying it. Absolutely it doesn't matter whatsoever, right? Because you're just looking for players to play the game. That's how I would do it. I mean, I think that to me is an okay harmony of keeping old games alive and kind of putting them everywhere, kind of picking and choosing based off size. Multiplayer games are just free reign, and then still having a couple, exclusive. I think most of the work is kind of just being done naturally. Like third-party studios don't want those party deals anymore, like the Square Enixes. They're done with that, right? They're higher ups, their shareholders, and their board has declared their strategy over the next 5 years. They're done with that. So a lot of that stuff is being done for you. Whether PlayStation wants to do that or not doesn't really matter. The other side doesn't want to do it, so you kind of lost that. The only thing you have left generally is your first party stuff, and then it's again kind of a pick and choose thing. But I don't know. I mean, I do acknowledge that yes, things can change rather fast, and we are moving in the direction of everything everywhere. I do agree with that, okay? It's long been going in that way, and it's hard to say it's going like the opposite. But I just think as things stand now, like the God of Wars and the things like that, I just don't see them as of yet going to Xbox. And if they do, I think you should build that year and a half, 2 years, which, to be honest with you, is exactly what Xbox is doing. For all the rumors that are coming out, we've yet, like Gears of War, and there's only a couple that have actually done it, let's say, day one, right? But a lot of the games that are, say, coming over to PlayStation from Xbox, Hi-Fi Rush, Sea of Thieves, things like that, they come out later. And the rumors of Gears of War E-Day coming to PlayStation, the rumor is it would come later, not even day one. And so it's okay, if that happens, then you easily, at best, reciprocate if you're PlayStation. At worst, you make it even longer, you don't do it at all. I don't think it's doomsday. Large parts of this I don't even think are that big of a deal in the first place, because I generally believe in the whole play anywhere thing. But I do think that consoles, especially when they're two different consoles, should have two different reasons for getting them. And so, if we can strike a harmony, I think I'd be pretty happy. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.